Hey guys, David Upchurch here, David Upchurch Real Estate. Hey, I want to address and go over some of my personal opinions, but also go over some facts about this NAR, National Association of Realtors lawsuit, and what it means to you, a buyer, what it means to you as a seller, and maybe what it means to you as a real estate agent moving forward. So I'm not going to go into too much about what the lawsuit Google it, you can go down a rabbit hole. But realistically, what happened was a bunch of sellers in, I think it was Missouri, sued a bunch of real estate companies saying that they colluded to keep commissions high, and a jury found them guilty. So then there was a bunch of copycat lawsuits. Somebody sued National Association of Realtors, and now they've settled. Okay. Hasn't been court approved yet, but everybody pretty much thinks it's going to be come July, mid-July of 2024. So I'm doing this video prior to that, obviously. So let me talk about what has absolutely changed, what is being told to you this change, which really it hasn't changed, and then what I think is going to be real estate look like moving forward. Okay. So I'm a pretty visual guy. So I want to draw this out on my iPad and show you guys kind of what I think is going to happen and go over this with you guys. So hopefully you guys find this helpful. So let's talk about what's not really changed. Okay. Okay. So the headlines that you're seeing from the media, which I know, shocker, not all media tells the truth all the time. They're saying 6% commissions are no longer. Well, commissions have always been negotiable, just period. I've been in the business almost 26 years. Commissions have absolutely always been negotiable. They will continue to be negotiable. For realistically, I mean, I've taken 5% listings. I've taken 4.5% listings. I've actually done listings where I didn't get paid anything. So if there was a standard 6%, why would I have done one of these? Well, it's because commissions have always been negotiable. Now, to say that pre-pandemic, at least in the Charlotte metro area, was 6% the absolute most common commission charged? Yes. And that commission was always split between buyer's agent and listing agent. So listing agent would get 3% and the buyer's agent would get 3%. And typically when it was 5%, it would be 2.5% and 2.5%. Now that wasn't even required. I've seen listing agents take 4 and give 2 to the buyer's agent. I've seen listing agents charge 8, give 3 to the buyer's agent and keep 5 for themselves. It's always been negotiable. I've seen this at 3 and this at 2. I've seen this at 2 and this at 3. It doesn't matter. This number just needs to equal this number. So in this case, they charged 8. So it's always been negotiable, always. So that's one thing that has just absolutely, it just did not change. Okay. So let's do this. Let's move now. Let's talk about what I think, let's just call it the old way. And then I want to talk about what I think the new way is going to look like. And I'm going to address it from a seller standpoint, a buyer standpoint, and a list and an agent standpoint, listing agent and buyer's agent. So let's just talk about the old way. So you had a seller that owned a house, okay, and they wanted to sell it. So we're going to call them a seller. They would reach out to an agent known as the listing agent. Okay. Or let's just call them the LA listing agent. Okay. They would say, hey, Mr. Seller, I want to sell my house, or Mr. Listing Agent, I want you to come to my house. I live at 123 Main Street. And I want to sell my house. The listing agent would go over, sit down with the seller, go through the house, go over comps, go over all the marketing plan, their strategy of getting the house sold, because their job as the listing agent was to get the seller the most amount of money. Okay. When the seller sells for the most amount of money, everybody on that side of the transaction wins. The agent gets more money, the sellers get more money, everybody's happy. Okay, so let's say they decide that they think this house will sell for $500,000. We're going to do easy math. Okay, at that point, the seller and the listing agent would negotiate a fee. That's where this thing is. The 6% thing has never changed. We didn't just automatically put 6 in there. We would negotiate it. Okay. So let's say that we're post-pandemic, and let's say that we agreed to do it at 5%. Okay. Well, we as listing agents know that the best way to get you maximum dollar is to get the most eyes on your house. So we would put the house in the MLS, which is a realtor to realtor communication tool, which then gets syndicated out to all these websites that you as consumers use. The Zillows, the realtor.coms, the homes.coms, the remax.coms, the davidupchurch.coms, brendasellshomes.com, whatever. I could go on forever. You got the picture. Here's one thing that changed, okay? Number one, the MLS, the old way, we as the listing agent had to put in a co-op commission amount that we would pay the buyer's agent of the fee that we're collecting from the seller. So again, most common was 2.5. So what we're doing when we put the house in the MLS is we're telling the buyer's agents of the world, hey, I have this listing at 123 Main Street. Here's the description. Here's all the legal information. Here's pictures, video, blah, 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 whatever. Help me try to find a buyer. They would go out. Either one, somebody would call them and say, hey, I want to go look at 123 Main Street, or they would do some advertising, whatever. They would go and show the buyer the house, okay? And they would go in the MLS and they would see that the buyer's agent would go in the MLS and see that they're going to be compensated 2.5% from the listing agent. So they know they're getting paid. So they go show the buyer the house. If they don't like it, they go show them another one. They show them another one. They show them another one until they find something and they purchase it. But they know they're being paid by the selling side, okay? Here's what's changing. This is the number one change. Now, when we're listing agents and we put the home into the MLS, and I say this is supposed to take mid-July of 24, there is no place to put in a co-op. We are not allowed to mention the co-op at all. Even if the seller says, hey, I want you, the listing agent, to share half of your commission with the buyer's agent. We are not allowed to put it in the MLS anymore. And let me tell you why. The biggest argument in the case was that agents would steer their buyer client, to houses that were paying them the most amount of money. To say that didn't happen would be a bold-faced lie to you. To say that happened way less than the public thought or thinks is the truth. It just didn't happen that much. It would be very hard for me as a buyer's agent, for a buyer to call me, because buyers know you guys are finding the houses online. You guys are obsessed when you're thinking about buying a house. You're looking, you're everywhere, you're searching, you're obsessed trying to find a house for you and your family. Then you reach out to a buyer's agent and say, I want to go look at that. For an agent to steer you away from it is pretty tough, because they'll just go find another buyer's agent. But it happens. And if it happens once, it's too many. So the DOJ, the plaintiffs, and NAR have agreed that we are no longer allowed to advertise the co-op in the MLS. Okay, so, well, now what? Okay, so the buyers now, this is change number 2. The buyers now are going to call an agent, just like they always did, and they're going to say, hey, I want to see the house at 123 Main Street. Can we see it in a half hour? Now, it is going to be required, because of this lawsuit, that a buyer enter into what's called a buyer agency agreement with the buyer's agent prior to any showing of a home. Hear me right. You as a buyer are driving through a neighborhood, you see a house that you like, there's been an agent that you've been communicating with through an app or whatever, you communicate to that agent, hey, can I see this house tomorrow at 2 or today at 2? You have to sign a buyer agency agreement with that buyer agent before you're allowed to look at that house with a buyer's agent. Now, you can call the listing agent and go unrepresented and do it on your own, and you don't have to do that. But if you want representation, You have to sign a buyer agency agreement prior to any showing. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't believe buyers are going to like that. Okay. I could be wrong. I just don't think they're going to like that. And I don't like it. It's like asking somebody to walk down the aisle with you before you've really gotten to know them. You're committed at that point. I don't like it, and I don't think you're going to like it. Okay. But you don't have a choice now because of this lawsuit. Buyers are kind of getting screwed, in my opinion. And this was there to protect the sellers. Because remember, sellers are the ones that sued, not buyers. So buyers are, in my opinion, are getting a little bit screwed here. Okay. So what does that mean? So now what used to happen is the sellers and the listing agent would negotiate a total fee, and the agent would co-op out some of it. Well, what DOJ wants is they want what's called decoupling of the real estate commissions. They want the listing agent and the seller to negotiate just the listing agent fee. So in this case, they're going to say, okay, Mr. Seller, I'm going to sell your house. I'm going to do all this marketing. I'm going to do pictures, videos. I'm going to do all the paperwork, protect you the whole way. I'm your coach. I'm your man. And I am going to charge you 2.5%. That's what I'm going to charge you. There is no requirement me of now putting it in MLS that I'm going to co-op with a buyer's agent. Okay. I can still do that, and I can advertise it somewhere else, but I cannot advertise it in the MLS. So what's going to happen now is because you are required to sign a buyer agency agreement, the buyer and the buyer's agent is going to negotiate a fee. And they're going to say, okay, let's say they negotiate 2.5%. Could be 2, could be 1, could be flat fee. It could be $1, it could be 0, it could be $1 million. It's negotiable. But in this scenario, I'm going to say it's 2.5%. What the buyer is saying in this agreement is, Mr. Buyer's agent, I'm going to hire you to represent me in the purchase of this home. And I guarantee you're going to be paid at least 2.5%. And I emphasize the word at least because the buyer's agent can lower that after the fact, but they cannot get paid a penny more than that number. So buyer's agents, if they sign a buyer agency agreement with a buyer and it says 2.5%, and the seller is offering a 4% commission or a 3% commission, they cannot get paid a dime more than this 2.5% right here. They can take less, but they can't take any more. Okay, so again, what's happening is the buyer is saying, hey, Mr. Buyer's agent, I'm going to hire you. I'm going to guarantee that you're going to be paid at least 2.5%. So if the seller won't pay it, I will. I'll pay it for you. I'm going to pay it. Sounds kind of crazy. So I think a buyer they have 3 options when they're making an offer on this house. Option 1 is they tell the seller, hey, I'll give you your $500K that you're asking, but I want you to pay all of my buyer's agent fee, which is 2.5% or $12,500. Or they could say, hey, Mr. Seller, I'll give you your $500K. I want you to pay some of the buyer's agent fee. Say I want you to pay 1% of it, and I'll pay the rest. They could say, hey, you know what? I'll give you your $500K, and I want you to pay none of the buyer's agent fee. I got it. I'll pay it. No problem. Okay? What's going to happen now is the buyer's agent fee is going to be negotiated up front between buyer and buyer's agent, but then negotiated in the offer to purchase on who's going to pay it. So the fee is negotiated up front. The amount or who's paying it is going to be, in my opinion, is going to be negotiated at the time of at the time of the offer to purchase. There is no more guarantee that the seller is going to pay anything. It's now a negotiable item whether the seller is going to pay all of it, some of it, or none of it. Okay. Now imagine if you are a seller and you have 3 offers Okay. You have these exact same 3 offers, but they're from different buyer. Buyer 1, buyer 2, buyer 3. Which one do you think the buyer is, or the seller is going to accept? Here's what sellers care about. They care about how much are they going to get at closing. They want to sell their house for the most amount of money they can possibly get and pocket all of that money. This is why I believe that a lot of buyers may go directly to the listing agent and go unrepresented. And this is where I think buyers are going to get screwed. I know you've sold and bought 4 or 5 houses before, but I promise you, you do not know how to do this as well as a trained professional. Do you know how to do it better than some realtors? Yes, you do. Because you got to remember, almost 50% of all realtors nationwide sell 1 or 0 homes in a year. You may have sold and bought more homes than the realtor that's representing you. That's on you. You people out there in the world, we are not all equal. There are some good agents and some bad agents. Some agents that do this at a very high level and very professional, and they're constantly looking out for their client. And then there are some agents that do not know what they're doing. And you're putting us all in the same bucket and just picking one out. And that's something that really needs to change, okay? But I digress. So, the buyer's agent fee is going to be negotiated at time of offer now. And again, this part is my opinion, okay? What is absolutely changing is that we're no longer going to be allowed to advertise the buyer's agent commission in the MLS. And that the buyer's agent and the buyer must sign a buyer agency agreement prior to showing, or that agent cannot show you that property. Okay. Those are the changes that are huge. So guys, listen, I'm not here to tell you that you cannot sell your house on your own. I'm not here to tell you that you cannot represent yourself on your own, because you can. You can also cut your own grass. You can also paint the entire interior of your house. You can also give yourself a haircut. There's a lot of things that you can do, your taxes. There's a lot of things that you can do, but you choose to pay somebody to do it because they're better at it. They know what they're doing. You don't want to screw it up, and it's you don't have time to do it. Okay. So you can do it. So don't come at me in the comments that, you could do it on your own. We know you can do it on your own. Do it on your own. It's perfectly fine. But also know that there's people out there that are going to pay because they see value in the agent. Okay. You can also represent yourself in a court of law if you're in a pickle. Okay. But I would advise you not to do that. The court system advises you to not go at it alone. Because there's just too many changes and there's too many laws. You need somebody there to protect you. But anyway, I digress. This is what I think the real estate world is coming to. I'm here just to educate. I decided in 2024 it was going to be about education for me. I'm going to just tell you what I think, 20 some years of experience. And I want to tell you the facts on what has changed and what's kind of been a little bit misleading out there. And if there's any way we can help you out, just let us know. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot.